Good evening, bonsoir. I'm Councillor Cynthia Lellam. On behalf of the Mayor and Council of Westmount, I thank you for your participation this evening. Au nom du maire, mairesse et le conseil de Westmount, je vous remercie de votre participation ce soir. It's my pleasure to introduce Nathalie Jodoin, Assistant Director, and Yuki Kropas, our Architecture and Permits Officer, both from the Westmount Urban Planning Department, who will review the history and background of this heritage recognition. Thank you.
Alors, bonsoir. On peut aller à la diapositive suivante. Je vais vous présenter l'ordre du jour. La rencontre de ce soir est une rencontre virtuelle, ce qui veut dire qu'elle est à distance. C'est une réunion du comité local du patrimoine de Westmount qui est en rediffusion sur YouTube Live. This evening, we have a video conference of the public meeting of the Local Heritage Council of the City of Westmount, which is being streamed live on YouTube. L'ordre du jour va aller comme suit. Bon, Madame Lellam nous a présenté, donc ça c'était l'item 1. L'item 2, on va parler de l'objectif de la rencontre de ce soir. Ça va être suivi en 3 par le patrimoine de la résidence au 178 Côte-Saint-Antoine. 4, la protection de ce patrimoine par une citation municipale. On va expliquer ce à quoi ça consiste. 5, on va vous donner un aperçu du règlement de citation. Et 6, il y aura une période de questions. So our agenda this evening was first by the introduction from Councillor Lellam of this this meeting. Second, we will discuss the objective of the meeting. 3, we will present the heritage of the property at 178 Côte-Saint-Antoine Road. 4, the protection of this heritage by a municipal recognition. 5, a overview of the project of bylaw for this recognition, and that would be followed by a question period. Ce soir, on va parler dans les 2 langues, pas toujours dans une version bilingue où on donne tout en traduction. Et toute question, tout commentaire qui pourrait être fait par un résident peut l'être fait dans la langue de son choix. So this evening, we will be addressing you in both languages, not necessarily in a full translation, but there'll be parts in French, parts in English. And any question or comment that can be made by a resident can be done in the language of his or her choice.
If I may interject, I forgot to introduce the members of the committee.
Oui.
So if I may, the members of the Local Heritage Committee are Julia Gersowitz, David Hanna, Caroline Breslaw, Eric Morosi, who is absent this evening, Gerald Seuferman, and myself. Thank you.
With regards to questions, concernant les questions de l'auditoire, il est possible de poser des questions via la plateforme YouTube, avec le volet chat qui est disponible. Donc, si vous êtes sur le site de la ville, vous pouvez avoir accès dans la fenêtre, en cliquant sur la fenêtre ou l'icône YouTube, vous pouvez avoir accès au lien qui amène dans la fonction YouTube qui vous donne accès au chat. Ou vous pouvez aussi déposer des commentaires pendant la période qui va suivre la présentation de ce soir sur une période de 2 semaines. So with regards to questions from the public, you may use the chat function of the YouTube website. So if you're on the city website, you click on the video image and you can gain access to the YouTube platform. There will be a chat box in which you can type in your question. Please cite your name, full name, and your address in order for us to be able to identify who is asking the question. Alors, on va maintenant parler de l'objectif de la rencontre. Ce soir, la rencontre vise à informer. Alors, c'est la première fois qu'on fait une citation municipale à Westmount pour un bâtiment, une propriété où on couvre l'ensemble du bâtiment qui est du domaine privé. Alors, l'objectif, c'est d'expliquer aux résidents, dans le cadre municipal, qui est un gouvernement, de comment ça procède et donc vous expliquer cette citation qui a été un projet de règlement qui a été déposé. Ensuite, l'objectif est de recevoir des résidents leurs représentations qui seront transmises au conseil municipal pour considération avant l'adoption finale du règlement. So the objective this evening is to inform the residents within the municipal government process that there is this projet de règlement, bylaw project that was submitted to council. And the objective is to receive from the residents their representations that will be considered by the council before any adoption of the final bylaw. Si vous souhaitez émettre vos commentaires par écrit au cours des 2 prochaines semaines, vous pouvez le faire par écrit, donc par courriel. Envoyez votre correspondance à legal@westmount.org ou, selon l'explication que je vous ai donnée tout à l'heure, pour ce soir, via la plateforme YouTube et la fonction chat. So in order to communicate your comments to council, please send in your email at legal@westmount.org, or if you wish to only have the questions read this evening, then you can use the YouTube platform with the chat function. Merci.
Thank you, Nathalie. So the current heritage recognition project that we are carrying through is a heritage recognition that was previously taken on by the government. And in 2012, the government of Quebec transferred that power to the municipalities to be able to give this heritage recognition to buildings on their own territory. This heritage recognition project is a legal process that comes from the Cultural Act. So in French, la loi sur le patrimoine culturel. It's a legal process that we are obligated to follow. We see on the left the legal process that's taken from the French guide provided by the government. And on the right, it's been translated in English by the city of Westmount. So in order to carry out a heritage recognition on a building or heritage immovable in Westmount, the city has to first begin by establishing a local heritage council. The second step would be for the city to present the heritage recognition project, the proposal, or propose the project to the municipal council. Following this step, the city has to adopt the notice of motion, in which case a transmission of the written notice of motion is sent to the owner or the whether that's a building or a heritage immovable or a heritage, so on. The fifth step is that the city has to publish the public notice regarding the local heritage council meeting. And then we are now at the sixth step, which is the public meeting led by the local heritage council. Following this evening, the transmission of the local heritage council's notice will be sent to the municipal council, which we will be transmitting the comments. And then at this point, we would then continue to adopt the Heritage Recognition Bylaw. Once the Heritage Recognition Bylaw has been adopted, the transmission of the Heritage Recognition Bylaw is sent to the owner and also sent to the Cultural Heritage Registrar for inscription. So as I mentioned earlier, tonight we are at the step where the local Heritage Council is holding the public meeting. I'll continue by giving a very brief history of the project. So it began in 2019. Earlier on in 2019, on September 17th, the local Heritage Council gave the recommended that the heritage immovable located at 178 Côte Saint-Antoine Road be recognized as a heritage building. On October 17th, the General Committee endorsed the LHC recommendation, in which case that led to the process of carrying out 2 heritage studies, one for the residence, the building, and one for the landscape. On July 21st, the transmission of the notice of motion was sent to the owners. On September 8th, the first reading of the bylaws, bylaw number 1552, was presented. And as you know, tonight we're holding the public meeting, and the second reading of the bylaw will be presented on October 19th, which is the same evening that the bylaw will be adopted. I will pass the microphone to Julia Gersovich, the chair of the local Heritage Council.
Good evening, everybody. It's very curious that we are using a 21st century technology to recognize an early 19th century building, but that's what we're doing. We're spanning almost 200 years in technology. The Goode House has remarkable heritage value. It is really being cited for its authenticity and its integrity. It's a building that was built in the 1840s as one of 4 properties that were designed for tenants at a time that Westmount was not Westmount. It was not even a recognized village. It was a small collection of houses that lay very far outside of the city. Imagine as well that the city of Montreal was really bounded by the old, virtually the old walls of the city. There was nothing that, nothing built up between old Montreal and Westmount. So very much in the outskirts of everything, a real suburban experience. Mr. Hayes decided to build 4 houses, built between 1840 and 1844. This is one of the 2 surviving houses. The other is its neighbor, 168 Côte Saint-Antoine. And the house itself, we probably owe its very high level of authenticity and certainly its equally high level of integrity to the fact that within 4 decades of it being built, it was transferred to a family called the Goode family, who continued to occupy it for about 140 years. And so they have really, we owe to them this remarkable ensemble of a building and a site. The Goodes were quite famous local gardeners and experimental cultivators. And so the garden itself is also quite an extraordinary artifact, if you want to call it that. So the building has been for many years one of the few category 1-star buildings in the city. We have over 4,000 buildings in the city, and we have just slightly over 40 buildings that have been categorized as category 1-star. So it indicates to you that about 1% of our population of buildings are this extraordinary. And although it has a status of a category 1-star building, that protects its exterior, but it doesn't protect the overall site and it doesn't protect the interiors. And by giving it this heritage recognition, which has been downloaded from the province onto the municipalities, we will be able to protect le tout, the entire ensemble of the building and its site and its interiors. And so I'm not quite certain what we want to, if we want to read all of this to you, it is to say that Westmount has for a very long time been very conscious of the value of the buildings in its domain. We have the oldest review commission in the province. In fact, I believe it might be in Canada, dating from 1916. So we've just finished celebrating our centenary. We have, if you read through all of these these dates, you will see that we have been devoted for the last 50 years to increasing protections and means of protecting it and communicating those protections to our citizens. In 2011, we were federally recognized by Parks Canada as a National Historic District. And in 2017, the first act of the Westmount Heritage Council was to designate the Glen Arch as our first heritage immovable. And then in 2018, the Prince of Wales himself, because he does validate the decisions of the committee, he awarded the City of Westmount the Prince of Wales Prize for demonstrating outstanding municipal heritage leadership, which is quite an honor. It's a rare one in the country, and it's certainly nice to have been to have received that honor. And so right now we are coming to the last line on this slide, which is to say that we are seeking the municipal heritage recognition for this extraordinary and, dare I say it, unique property in Westmount. So shall I introduce the site? Okay, so there's some dry statistics that don't really in any way indicate how marvelous the building is. We are not going to be showing you any interiors of the building because, quite frankly, it is a private residence and the city wishes to respect the privacy of the owners. So if you're expecting any such images, you will be disappointed. However, you can see that the site sits on Côte Saint-Antoine Road, which is a First Nations trail that carved its way through what was to become Westmount. Sitting right on that very ancient trail is the property that was made into 4 separate lots in the 1840s, as I say, when the rest of the city was wilderness. And here in 1868, you can begin to quite understand it was still wilderness. So 25 or so years after the buildings were built, they remained virtually their own neighbors. But they were in themselves encouraging of development along Côte Saint-Antoine. And one of the things that was brought forward in the historic analysis was that these buildings were a motor, if you want, for the continuing development of Côte Saint-Antoine. It's interesting to note, and of course that no longer exists, that just to the south, more or less around where Selwyn House and City Hall is and the church, there was once a building quarry. So this is the heritage character area today, and you will note that there are a number of Category 1 buildings. The red dot shows you the 178, the Goode House that we are seeking the heritage recognition for today. And there are equally quite a number of important ensemble buildings as well. There were 2 studies that were undertaken by the city to ensure that we understood the heritage values of the Goode House. Those were done by Luce Lafontaine Architects in with the input, the scholarship of Professor Christina Cameron. And then there was a landscape study done by Williams Accueilli Asselin, known as WAA, piloted by Ron Williams, former professor of landscape architecture at the Université de Montréal. And the report, which I believe is accessible to the citizens, will, and so you can consult it if you want, discusses the history of the building, its heritage values, which derive from its history, its age, its connection to the Jewish community, its extraordinary position on St. Antoine Street, through its contextual values that largely have to do with its extraordinary landscape, and finally its architectural values as a rare example of Greek Revival architecture in Montreal. Well, there you go. And of course, its stunningly intact interior. So we just glimpse in the right-hand corner a bit of the fireplace. All of the detailing of the house is intact: the plasterwork, the moldings, the windows, the fireplaces, the wide board flooring, the cabinetry. It's basically been handed down from every generation of the Goode family to the next intact. They were a little bit edgy, and they installed a bathroom sometime in the 1940s. And so who would like to take over this link?
Thank you, Julia. We will continue by discussing the bylaw draft. You see on the screen 2 links. We have the link for the French projet de règlement and the English bylaw draft. It's available on the city website. The link can be found on the council page of the city website under the September 8th, 2020 council meeting. So essentially the bylaw draft is divided in 8 sections, and what it outlines, it begins by outlining the purpose of the designation. What I will go through this evening is the reason for the designation. For one, this section of the bylaw is divided in several sections. So the first part being the historical value. I will skim through the points. However, I see that the screen is not quite showing all of the points. I believe that, okay. I apologize if you don't see the bottom part of the screen. I see that it might be cropped off. So the first part is the historical value, because the Goode House was built between 1840 and 1844. As was mentioned earlier, it's one of the oldest houses in Westmount. We're giving it the heritage recognition because it's also located on Côte Saint-Antoine Road, which is an artery of major importance in the development and history of the cities of Westmount, both Westmount and Montreal, and because it influenced the development of the surrounding area, as was mentioned by Ms. Julia Gersovich. As we just discussed, the architectural value of this residence is extremely high, is exceptional. It is a rare example of Greek Revival architecture in Quebec. It's one of the 4 houses originally made up the Metcalfe Terrace, today only 2 remain. It also is extremely intact. It has not undergone any significant alterations since it was built. Because of the integrity of its construction in stone and of its other materials, because of the integrity of its interior, the layout of its interior and its materials and finishes, and because it was built by a renowned architect. The landscaping value, it's a typical English garden of the era. We're giving it the heritage recognition because of the integrity of its landscaping, including the fencing and the division and sequences of the spaces, because of the stewardship and dedication of the Goode family, which helped preserve the unbroken continuity of its exceptional landscaping over the course of several generations, because its gardening includes species of interest, such as trillium and the ginkgo biloba tree, and because the property serves as a landmark. The emblematic value, because the Goode House is one of the oldest houses of the city, because it is one of the first testimonies of urban planning, and because its presence is etched in the city's collective memory because of its architecture and environment. So that was the section on why we are offering or giving the heritage recognition to this residence. The bylaw details that the bylaw details and also relies on the following procedures in place to structure and guide all proposed works. We will rely on the municipal regulations for all applications that come to the city for proposed modifications or proposed works. The municipal regulations include the current bylaws in place, which are the zoning bylaws and the PIEA, the SPAPE bylaw, which is the PAC process, which the PAC recommends favorably or unfavorably recommends projects to council. I want to remind you that council is the decisionary body for all recommendations. The bylaw also heavily relies on the Parks Canada document called the Standards and Guidelines for the Conservation of Historic Places in Canada, which is basically the foundation of preservation, restoration, etc. of historic buildings. It's a guide, and we heavily rely on this guide. We also rely on the heritage reports to inform which elements of the site and the building, as well the exterior and the interior, the elements which have heritage value. Again, the idea is not to freeze the building in time. We understand that this building must be inhabited by a family for it to continue serving its purpose. And like all buildings, they need to be serviced, they need to be modernized, they need to be, services need to be replaced, upgraded, etc. The purpose of the heritage recognition is to protect elements that have high heritage value, define them and protect them. The elements that don't have high heritage value, of course, can be modified in ways that are deemed acceptable. And lastly, the bylaw also relies on the local heritage recommendation, which was put forward to council, and which will serve as a guideline at the urban planning department for all projects that come in proposing modifications or changes to the building and the site. Once again, the local heritage council is an advisory committee, and it is ultimately the council that makes the final approval on projects that come into the urban planning department. Okay, so that was the end of presenting the bylaw. If Ms. Councillor Lala, if you would like to explain how the residents can submit their comments. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
So sorry. So from September 16th to October 1st, 2020, written comments from any interested person may be submitted in writing to legal@westmount.org. Alors, en français, le 16 septembre au 1er octobre 2020, toute personne intéressée pourra soumettre des commentaires écrits à l'adresse suivante, legal@westmount.org. Voilà. So that's from today until the 1st of October. So in lieu of a public consultation per se, we will be accepting your comments in writing. And next. Will we be moving to the question period now?
I think so.
All right, so I would ask Elizabeth Simard from our communications department if we've received any questions.
Bonjour tout le monde, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui,
Yes, I will say to you that this part of the meeting or the public hearing that we're embarking on today will be 40 minutes in length, as has been asked. Every person who puts forward a question will be asked to have written or state their name and their address, so that it follows the same rhythm that we do in normal public hearings that occur in the council chamber or at Victoria Hall. So could I ask for the first question, Elizabeth?
Oui, en fait, on n'a toujours pas de questions dans le live chat sur YouTube. Donc, pour l'instant, on n'a pas de questions. Donc, à ce moment-là, on peut attendre encore quelques minutes et encore une fois, encourager les gens à soumettre leurs commentaires ou questions via l'adresse qui a été donnée plus tôt dans la présentation.
peut-être Elisabeth, tu veux répéter l'adresse?
Oui, excusez-moi, je ne l'ai pas sous les yeux. Ah oui, voilà, c'est legal@westmount.org.
So legal@westmount.org. If you have any questions, you can submit them now.
I must say to you that we don't have any downtime halftime show, so we'll just be sort of waiting for the questions.
Can I make a clarification?
Yes.
In order to receive questions this evening, residents must go to the YouTube live
That's what I thought.
with the chat. With regards to submitting commentary to the legal department, then this is through legal@westmount.org. And those will be received over a 2-week period. This evening, if you want to submit a question live, it cannot be done through legal@westmount.org. It must be done through the YouTube chat platform.
Sorry, yes, you are correct. And if you look under the More button of the chat, you'll find the chat and then put it through there.
This is a bit like a telethon. We're waiting for your questions. People are standing by for your questions.
Operators are live.
Operators are standing by for your questions.
Donc, toujours pas de questions sur le YouTube live.
All right.
Do we have any indication how many people have accessed this presentation?
When I checked earlier, there were 24 participants, including ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're just going to give it another 5 minutes, and then if there is no question period, I will ask Councillor Wallum to declare the session over. So it's 7:35. We started this. We are a minute into it. So we'll just wait another few minutes and see if we have provoked any public participation or questions.
I'm informed by Councillor Pert, who's watching on YouTube Live, that there are now 31 watching.
31 people, but no questions.
Thank you, Councillor Pert.
We could crowdsource something while we're waiting here.
Well, it's possible that those participating would rather submit their questions in writing through our legal@westmount.org. It's possible.
So
I would say then that I would like to thank everybody for their participation tonight, to the 31 people besides ourselves who have signed in, and we welcome your commentaries, and I wish you all a very good night, and thank our panel, our committee, and the great work through our administration from Yuki Kropas and Nathalie Jaudoin. Thank you all very much, and I wish you all a very good evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.